got some spray foam going on in here today. It's just been completed. They're foaming the rim. So let's just start up at the top floor. There you can see that blue or aqua colored stuff. That is 2 pound spray foam. So there's an incredible amount of heat loss at the end of a floor system. So nice part about the 2 pound is I think once you approach about 2 inches, it starts to create its own vapor retarder. So what they've done is they've sprayed all along here. One of the things in the sequence that can go a little bit wrong sometimes is down below, if you recall, we had some heating that was installed on the basement ceiling. And in order to get access to the rim, which is underneath here, underneath that bottom plate, they've had to open the floor up. So what they've done is they've set the depth in the saw very carefully so they don't damage the core of the joist, and they've had to pull up subfloor to gain access to that rim area. We can go downstairs below, but what they've done is they've built a bulkhead which limited their access, and then the heating pipes are in the way. So just a little bit of a warning there. We can move into this other area here. They haven't done that. In the basement there are no heating pipes in the way, so they had access to the rim. So further along, we can get a little bit better look at that 2 pound spray foam all along the rim cavity. And they've gone around the whole perimeter. Ensures a really good seal. They have full access to it. They can see where they're spraying. Around the corner, over the door lintel, over the window lintel, over this cantilever lintel, and so on, all the way around the house. Well, you can see that tall wall is started to be insulated, not complete. Looks like they've just put it in there quickly. There's some gaps and voids and things are not finished here just yet. What they're using is a, you can tell it's Owens Corning because it's pink, and I believe they're using an R22 bat. Actually, we can have a look at the product right here. Owens Corning likes using the pink stuff. You don't often see that at other than commercial applications. Sometimes it's just a factor of price or availability. Get their wonderful Pink Panther logo. Hey, so up above on that tall wall again, only partly insulated with our R22 bat. You can see lots of places where we're going to get a fair bit of thermal bridge. One in particular is this, what looks like 5-ply 2x6 running across at this rim. If they'd used an engineered material to get the length that they required, they probably could have avoided that. It's also important to note one of the things we need to do for vapor retention, and that's where this landing contacts the outside, and there is no space here. The framer has put this poly here. There's no way that they'd be able to insulate and get a complete vapor seal through this, so this will extend down below the landing as well. Here it's not necessary. They can run poly, the vapor barrier, vapor retarder material straight through because we've got that gap. That's something that the framer needs to take care of ahead of time. Very similar, just same as on our corners as well here. All right. The insulator's actually not here today. He's probably on his way. But we can see tubes of acoustical sealant. Okay, basically gasket in a tube. And we can see where they've been applying that to the ceiling. Framer has installed poly between the top plates. between the top plate and the cap plate. That's the framer's handiwork. And we can see how when the insulator comes, they put poly on the ceiling. Anywhere there's a joint, they apply the acoustical seal, which is that black substance we see there. Also around the areas where they're going to perforate that for lighting. That's an LED fixture we've got there. Another place they use the acoustical seal is joints in the lumber. They're prone to leakage. So they've gone around like this. They've jointed in between the joints. This is covered with poly, otherwise that would be all over my hand. It looks like there's a joint coming up here. And they haven't got around this pipe yet, but they'll tie that in. The other thing they like to do is these windows have been foamed to the exterior, and then the rest has been filled with fiberglass insulation. They're creating a vapor seal to the vinyl jamb at this point. It has been attempted to do that on the other side of this wall. It's very difficult to do. This seems to get some of the best results possible. So it's one of the better insulators that I'm aware of, that I've worked with in the past. It's fantastic. And again, we've got that acoustical seal where the ceiling poly meets the wall poly. And also there's a few extra beads of the acoustical seal in the gap between the top plate and the cap plate. So it's a messy proposition. It's messy stuff. It doesn't cure very well. It stays fluid for quite some time. You see a little bit of the blue tape that's specific for vapor barrier. It's probably just got a little bit of a hole there, so they just sort of covered it up a little bit. The other interesting thing to note is our ceiling fixture. They've put poly right directly over top of it, which is the right way to go. When the drywall goes on the ceiling, they will route out just around the outside of the gray plastic, and that black ring is a compressible foam gasket that would create quite a good positive seal between the drywall, the poly, and the light fixture, so we don't get any excessive vapor leakage there. An example of a completed portion right here. That's really good, actually. You can see the whole window and the ceiling complete and our acoustical seal joints. And very important, now these walls may or may not have a bead of acoustical seal under the bottom plate, which is a good practice. Some people will use the foam seal gasket, but at the very, very minimum, the insulator is always going to run this bead of acoustical seal underneath the poly to the bottom plate and floor connection, because this is a high potential for leakage here. Okay, so it's important to make sure this is swept clear. It looks like the insulator has done it, because we don't want any of this material in the acoustical seal to create leakage. We don't know if there's acoustical sealant or a foam gasket underneath this bottom plate. We weren't here for the framing, so we're not sure. It most likely is. Again, you can see the care and attention that's taken to that acoustical seal bead. And one of the reasons that we do call it a vapor retarder sometimes is because, I mean, it's not perfect. We've got staples that we put it on with. Technically, I suppose you could go around and cover all those as well. But at the end of the day, you're never going to achieve 100% absolute perfection on a vapor retarder. So vapor barrier is a bit of a perfectionist term. More of the ceiling. This is the attic access. Has been cut out already, which is great with the poly. They've just stuffed that loose, usually scrap insulation that's been over compressed. They'll pop that in the hole later on when if the temperature drops. It's probably about 15 degrees on this November day. It's a great place for heat loss. This insulation doesn't get added to the attic until after the drywall goes on. It's a blown in product. It has a bit of weight to it, so that would compromise the ceiling vapor barrier, vapor retarder. And once the drywall is on it, holds it in place. Beautiful job, nice and straight. It's just like making a bed to nice tight sheets, only upside down, so you can imagine how difficult that is, especially with all the black goofy stuff. A little bit of R40 here, much thicker, probably close to about 14 inches deep. And what they're doing is they're using it in areas of the ceiling where they can't get the insulation blown in. So this is that tray ceiling that we looked at earlier. And we can see it's quite thick. If we look right up in there, it's about 14 inches deep. That's a minimum R40 in this zone. The only imperfect part about this type of insulation, and that's these trusses, are going to create a thermal bridge and a bit of a gap. So one thing to consider designing this kind of roof, you can see there's not a whole lot of room in those trusses for ventilation. There's not a whole lot of room to get insulation on top of the pink layer that we see here, where we could have continuous insulation. So it's a bit of a compromise. We've got some thermal bridge through the truss, just the same as you do through a stud. Okay, same as you do through lintels. Okay, you can insulate the lintels. You can use different material, thinner and stronger material to gain a thinner plane that affords room for insulation. But there are always standards for every build. Again, this looks like this is all ready to poly. There's those lovely heating vent protectors, keeps all these wood fibers from going down in there. Okay, back to our Marta Lube house. It's Tuesday, November 10th. Today, what we should see going on in here is the drywallers hanging drywall. Seems to me, oh, I recognize the vehicles. I know this crew. Toronto Maple Leaf fans, all of these guys. Okay, you see the drywall's been dropped off. You can see a lot more of the insulation. Well, the insulation's going to be complete now. You can see that whole wall with our vapor seal to the floor with the black acoustic seal. You notice how the electrical boxes just have the 6mm poly, the vapor barrier right over top, and the gaskets in behind here. We'll see, we get upstairs, we'll see the guys. They'll cut those out, go right over top. There's that lovely spray foam again. So this drywall has been completed, or the insulation rather has been completed. And that's what we have the drywall guys in the house. We can see the entire rim has been foamed since we were last here. The light green stuff on top. More drywall, some 8-foot sheets leaning up against the wall, some 12-foot sheets laying on the floor, and some 14-foot sheets. I like to use the longest sheets they possibly can to minimize the amount of joints in the drywall.
less taping. So we will see the what we call the taper. They're the guys that fill the cracks. You can see lots more of that blue tape on the wall. This is our vapor barrier tape. It's pretty much limited to how they can control. These would be low voltage wires for under cabinet lighting in the kitchen, countertop plugs and the such. So any voids in the vapor barrier, they've protected with that. One thing we neglected to rough in back, or one thing we neglected to talk about back when we were looking at rough ends, and that's that gas line for a stove has been roughed in here. So this is where the stove will go. We know that because we can see the hood fan up above the rough end up there and the insulated. And also, if you recall, we had that large area that had been spray foamed to the rim underneath that wall has since been patched. So the pieces that they cut out to make that happen, they just saved them and probably glued and screwed those right back down again. And that was all along this area as well. As well took a quick look in the basement. There's our stairwell, our tall wall, polyed, tape, ready to go. Moving down the stairs here. See that drywall again's been loaded, probably through that basement window that we looked at last week. And we can see the entire basement has been insulated, the frost wall, and polyed. And then all the joints sealed up with that acoustical seal again. And there's that unique, we're assuming a wet bar in the basement. Has been protect. These pipes are on the warm side of the insulation so they won't freeze later. Got that all taken care of. This is a great stage in the house. It's usually pretty clean. The insulators have cleaned up after themselves. Drywall stage is not that messy, fairly dusty, but just natural light we have in the house, a little bit dark. So again, exterior walls, frost walls if you will. We've got R22 bad insulation in between 2x4 studs, not 2x6 but 2x4 studs that were left off quite a ways. You can see some of that spray foam that we were talking about that they had access to a little bit down here. That's a cantilever up in there so we can't see it. But again, those heating pipes that they needed access to that they couldn't access from below, so they cut those holes. More foam up in there we can just see. Note the effort made to keep all this continuous. Through the completed portion here, you can see where the guys have been using their routers to cut out for pot lights. There's a little plate up in there they're using. They always do the ceiling first. Take a really good close look right there. You can see that they've coped it pretty close to the framing. And then what happens is the wall drywall comes up to that. Okay, so horizontal,
the bevel. If you can appreciate this, even get a shot down the side. There's actually a little bit of bevel on the side of the sheet. So what goes on here is later when the taper comes in there, they can put their drywall compound in here and their tapes in this, and eventually you'll end up with a flat surface there. When they measure the house, they try and get as few joints as possible, so different lengths of sheets go on different lengths of wall. So we got the whole ceiling done in here. Again, cutting out for electrical boxes. That high whiny noise we heard earlier is what that is. They go by them. If something's missing, again, when we were here before, we could see the advanced guy was marking on the floor in this fluorescent orange paint where things go. Example of how they go around a window. A little bit of a boo-boo up in the left-hand corner there, that happens. They're careful not to disturb that poly to jam seal that they need for the vapor barrier. And away they go. So the house starts to close in a little bit. Again, ceiling. Looks like one of the guys is working here putting the walls on. And away you go. There's cement board for the showers here. So this stuff is waterproof, a lot better than water resistant drywall. This stuff is actually sort of like concrete board, I guess, often known as dent shield. Tell by the color of it, and it's very, very heavy as well. That'll be going in these areas here. Again, ceiling first. Some insulating stuff that we didn't see last time we were here. You can see the insulator has foamed all the penetrations in the top plates, as we've got that poly running through the top plate and the cap plate. The electricians have drilled right straight through to run wire up through the attic, but we don't want warm, moist air. Even though it's in this wall cavity later, it's still considered warm, moist air. We don't want that jetting up into the attic, causing any problems. So you can see they've shot that sort of yellow colored expandable spray foam up in there, just trying to attempt to seal that off best they can. Room in here looks pretty much complete. So again, we can see that you can see that bevel all the way around. I don't know if you guys can notice it, but there's a change in my voice because the soft insulation isn't absorbing my sound as much, so there's a much harsher sound in here, just bouncing off all the completed drywall. Again, then there's your ceiling. Interesting point to note, you'll notice on the ceiling they use a lot more screws because gravity's not your friend. Going to use a lot of screws on the wall too, typically 5 across the sheet. 1 in each bevel, and then 3 in the field. Again, gravity's not your friend, but the other thing too is they've got the plastic vapor barrier there. Look at the interior walls, they don't really screw in the field that much. They'll screw around the edges, they screw in the bevel where it's going to get covered later. But here in the field we don't see a lot, so they use an adhesive. It comes in a big tube in a caulking gun, and away they go. Just like that. Organizing all their scrap pieces, smaller pieces that likely will not get used, goes to a special place. We looked at the cold air return metal last time as well. You can see how they've gone around it. Doesn't look terribly neat. Doesn't matter because it gets covered up with a decorative grill later on. There's an example of a plug that they've cut out with a rotozip. Piece just hasn't fallen out yet, and there it goes. So we can see our plug. It's an interior wall plug, that one. pretty much often just a score and snap. Just put a sheet around the corner, he scores it on the back side, gives it a snap, and then just cuts the paper on the other side, just like that. Let's see what he's doing here.
I'll have to cut the door out. So.
Oh, that's cool. Oh.
Awesome.
Just a couple of things just pertaining back into rough ends again, and that's these pipes, the way they're protected. Actually serves as a sort of a straight area for drywall to move through as well. The way they secure it, quick little tape of the joints just to make sure that the air is not lost too much in the house. Again, same thing up here. Just where they've cut out those top plates, which is allowable. And you can see where they've put in that angled piece of metal up there just to sort of keep everything continuous. Same thing at the bottom. So this is a cold air return here. This whole cavity, even though they put backing in the wall here, this isn't the full thickness, so air will still move through that. This is cabinet backing, so they'll pull air through those. Actually, you can see a hole up above there on the floor. What that is excuse me, cold air will come down through that. It'll pull down in between these two studs down to this area in this floor system, down into the basement, and then return back to the furnace to get mixed with fresh air and then reheated and distributed through the house again. If not taken care of by the air exchanger as well. Probably evacuate a lot of that stale air. Another sort of unique thing you'll see in kitchens a lot is a recessed fridge opening. So
It's a 2x4 wall here. What they've done is they've put 2x4 on the flat. They've ripped it so it's 1.5 inches wide, and then 2x4s on the flat here. Again, just to receive a fridge. That way the depth of the fridge doesn't seem like a big deal, but that extra distance that they can pull the fridge back looks like probably 2 inches. Makes a huge difference because fridges are actually quite deep. You can see we've got a blue line there as for a water line for the fridge that's been brought in. Changing the subject, just moving over to electrical a little bit too. These plates, anywhere, you see them around kitchens a lot. They're called pro plates or protection plates. What that does is they put them anywhere, especially where cabinets are. You can see them along the floor there, just in behind the poly. Okay, they're anywhere they anticipate screws are going to be used, long screws, especially in cabinet areas. They need to protect the wiring that's running through there. We can't see the wire anymore because it's been encompassed by the insulation, but we can see numerous gray protection plates along there. Other areas where you'll see that, anywhere even where the cabinets aren't anticipated, in particular around bottom plates, etc., or throughout the house, wherever the electricians have drilled through, they put those pro plates on there. Typically, they don't have to worry about much past 1.5 inches. That's kind of where what the depth of the screw would be. So turning our focus back to a little bit more framing again with the 2-ply LVL there in the orange. Again, note how it's posted with all that 2x6. Part of that 2x6 is actually holding up this lintel above that window as well. But look at the acoustical seal they band down there. Once the drywall is on, it'll be tight against this, holds the poly against it. This is to prevent air infiltration into the house, and it's also to prevent vapor from moving out as well. So the vapor barrier is actually sort of an air barrier at the same time. Loads of it around here. You can see all the potential for thermal bridge. So we've got a double king here. So there's our king, runs up, supports that. Here we've got a 2-piece jack. It's sort of got this piece in here, but this double jack is holding up this piece, which in turn is holding up those 2 pieces of jack, which are going up to a lintel that's above that second window. That's a lot of framing, so that's 4.5 inches or 6 inches worth of framing in that wall that's going to conduct energy straight through. So an exterior insulation system is a huge benefit if we go that route. So I'm not sure what this house is. Looks like it's going to get cementitious stucco if I'm just looking out there at the garage. So maybe a lot of heat loss that way. Good detail. This is the other side of that 2-ply LVL beam we talked about. You can see how we've got a connection on there. Got a special 2-ply beam hanger up in there, okay? And we've got a flush beam with joists coming off it on both sides, the hangers. And it comes back into this wall here, and I'm assuming it probably cantilevers out. Yes, it does. So it heads right on the outside. And we can see where they've foamed it, and there's another one on the outside there as well. So switching gears one more time. House has black building paper on it, not Tyvek, because it is going to get cementitious stucco. That's what this wire is all about. So when the scratch coats go on, the first few coats, basically the cement product goes on there. When it cures, what it does is it dries back. The theory is it gives you a drain plane behind this wire, and it'll shrink back, and the drain plane is against this building paper. Okay, so and then they'll put a couple coats of that on. This is what they call 30-minute paper. It's 2 layers of it. The cement will break down the first layer a little bit, but the second layer in theory is supposed to provide us our building envelope. And then after a couple coats of that, they'll put on what's called the color coat, where they put the actual color in. This area here is called stucco stop. It's got the holes in it for drainage. So the drain planing behind, after it shrinks back, comes down and it drains out, and you can see below that there's a piece of the black stuff there. The brown stuff is another metal flashing. And then the foundation will have a parging product brought up to the underside of it for exterior finish. So just some cool stuff to look at while we're here. Detached garage in the back. Little hip roof on it. Double car garage by the look of it. And back here we'll have, looks like we've got a deck package landed in here already to build an exterior deck or set of steps at the minimum, and then our backyard. So we're facing south.